I want to talk about training and just kind of scratch the surface of things. I've done a lot of videos on training and techniques and stuff like that and ways to hone skill, but I don't think a lot of people really understand how it works, because a lot of people will just go to like an 8-hour course and they'll call it good for a year, and that's not okay. You could actually learn more by just doing things yourself than going to an 8-hour course and basically pissing your money away by not practicing afterwards or not taking notes so you knew drills to do to enhance your performance, and not studying ways to neurologically assist your ability to perform long term, because working memory is a great thing for passing qualifications and being able to hold on to a certain skill set at a certain level for a short amount of time, and enough to pass a qualification or whatever, hence the warm-ups that people like to do. But anyways, one of the biggest things I see that is a failure is people will dedicate to training for a little bit. They'll go to an 8-hour course, they'll be interested, and then once a week they'll whip out their pistol and go to the range or whatever, and that's their idea of training. I would actually say that instead of going to the range once a week, I would say go to the range once a month and actually just practice on stuff dry. I've advocated this with new firearms as well, where I'll tell people, okay, so take your new firearm and get good at reloads, get good at manipulating the trigger, get a laser trainer. They cost like $70, $80 or whatever, great investment. When you think that you don't see your front sight move, not that you should be staring at it, but when you don't see any movement in your sights and when it's superimposed on the target, then throw in a laser and see how it's doing from distance. And you should be aiming small and aim at something very small, even when you're moving and shooting or dry firing. And you should be able to hit a very small target before you are going to the range. And this is something that is going to require consistency. But you're probably going to have to practice a little bit, like 5 to 10 minutes every day. And everybody's got 5 to 10 minutes. If you have time to shove a cheeseburger in your mouth, you have time to learn a skill and be competent in it. So the next thing is the type of practice you need to be doing is, it needs to be deliberate, right? You need to intentionally do every movement. For example, with reloads, if you're practicing doing a reload, everything, you could actually read it out loud. You could print off, or you could take a piece of paper and a Sharpie and actually write down your process into little things like, okay, identify, eject, load, slide, close, and assess. You could read them out loud and make it very deliberate, and as time goes on, that deliberate practice will become a lot more smooth to the point, number one, you've memorized, and number two, it's just a natural thing. So you'll start outpacing your ability to even say that stuff or even read it. It'll just become instinctive to do it properly. So the point of being deliberate is to get that process started and get that snowball effect in your training, and doing that consistently. Not just reloads, but everything else like draw, target tracking and stuff like that. Eyes first and then firearm, eyes lead the gun. And a lot of times they'll say like gun and eyes go together. That's called flagging in the civilian world. So probably don't want to do that. You probably want to have it down, identify, and then to the target, right? Kind of getting off topic there, but next is tiered. I hit on this briefly. So a tiered training system is anywhere from not even pulling the trigger to doing live fire and movement, and have things tiered and just add in stages of stress. So one thing that I see a lot of people doing is they'll do things that they're comfortable with, i.e. like standing still and doing reloads. I'm not an advocate of that. I want to add in as much realistic stuff as possible. And luckily for me, I've been in those situations where you realize how important movement is in order to save your life, hence why I'm here today. But I had that unfortunate experience, but I kept it with me. And so just kind of brainstorming on different things, I see the importance of it. And so the importance of actually mimicking those scenarios, not the exact scenarios, but shaking things up. So every doorway in your house could be, an individual fighting spot. So working around that doorway and routes of escape and stuff like that. Just being very deliberate in advancing your skills one level at a time. You might work on pawing first without a gun, and then you might work on pawing and just like pointing at different things inside the room. Identify and present, and then identify, present, and pull a trigger with a laser trainer to make sure that you're accurate and you're fast. And then from there, you might pull the trigger and then just commit to the room. So you can tier it and add stress and stuff like that, but the best thing to do is almost always have stress to like an 80 to 90% success rate. Neurologically, that seems to work for skill retention. So after that, most of this stuff can be done dry. There's little things you can do to basically get your grip to being competent right out of the I was going to say right out of the box, but right out the gate. Without even firing a shot, you can actually develop grip strength that will make it to where shooting is incredibly easy. Controlling the recoil really is easy by developing the specific muscles and doing certain drills. So when you do live fire, you don't need to do a ton of live fire to figure out how to control recoil. You'll figure out recoil within the first couple shots. So anyways, there's a lot of things you can do, and you might want to start with grip training, then presentations, then drawing, and then things like that. Increase the difficulty and increase components that are very realistic. And then a full-on scenario, confrontation to hands-on to drawing the weapon, and then calling police, and then cooperating with police, making your brief statement or whatever. You could go down a whole list of things that you have to do and be conscious of, and drill these things in different ways. Now, the last thing I will say about tiered training system is do not do things like the 1 to 5 course of fire. They call them drills, or the bill drill, which is not a drill, it's a course of fire. That is a good test. But if you drill those things over and over again, the problem is that you're going to water down the actual effects, and you're going to isolate it to a skill that's only good for that particular target, that particular moment, and so on and so forth. It's not going to really have too much cross applicability. Be wary of how you are training, and you need to have good diversity. That forces your brain to adapt. That forces your brain to pay attention to certain principles in your training. We got to work with the mind here. We can't just not treat firearms like a martial art. It is more complex. It demands more, not only legally, but physically and mentally. So it is more like a martial art than it is just, playing golf. So anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and you guys have a